Welcome to Find Me in a Book. This podcast is meant to be like you're talking to your best friend about romance books. I share my passion with those who love to read, those who don't have time to read, or those that don't like to read, but still want to know and be involved with book conversations. Thank you for being here. Let's get started. Alison Rose Greenberg writes passionate and compelling stories about love, heartbreak, and hope. She is a screenwriter and speaks fluent rom-com, lives for the 90s WB dramas, and cries to Taylor Swift. She is the author of Bad Luck Bridesmaids, and her knowledge of the music industry is center stage in her second novel, Maybe Once, Maybe Twice. Hi, Alison. Welcome to Find Me in a Book. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. So your novel, Maybe Once, Maybe Twice, came out October 3rd. Is that correct?
Yes.
How has it been? It's almost been a month that it's been out. Has it just been kind of like a whirlwind?
It has. My first book came out like the height of COVID when Omicron was hitting, and so I didn't really get out there, like out of my house with it. And this one I have been getting out of my house with the book, which has been nice. And the reception's been really lovely. And I'm so I'm just happy it's out.
That's so exciting that it's been out a month, and it's an incredible novel. I loved it. I devoured it so quickly. I have so many thoughts about it that I'll kind of sprinkle throughout the whole episode. But yeah, it was incredible and I loved it. Okay, so I know that your readers are really excited to hear from you. So I have some deeper questions for you regarding like the book and your process and everything like that. So I definitely want to get into it. So my first question is, I want you to tell us how you got into writing in the first place.
I started really screenwriting first. So I started screenwriting at USC and took one class and was just really hooked, and it felt like breathing, and that was really my start into writing. And prose came pretty accidentally. I was pitching a movie, but the way they wanted me to pitch it was to do a short story, and the short story ended up turning into a book. So I pitched it as a book and as a movie, or I wrote the manuscript for the book and sold that as I was pitching and selling the move to write the movie. So it was a very backwards way into prose and into authorship.
I love it. That is so cool. That is so interesting that you did kind of go a back way through it. I want to know the first story you ever wrote, and how young were you?
I don't know. I'm sure I was young, but I think the first like finished piece of work I wrote was college, like something that, I'm sure I wrote a lot of fiction as a kid, but there's nothing that's jumping out to me. Like this short story about two brothers is something that I wrote in college, but it was a screenplay.
Okay. Is your first love like screenplay over like writing books?
I mean, it's more in my DNA, but I really love writing books. This is my second book, so I feel like I'm getting started. But screenwriting is something I was doing long before that. So it's my first love, I should say.
I love that. Okay. That is so good. So with like the screenplays and everything that you're writing, when did you know that you wanted to be a romance author?
I think it kind of happened a little backwards for me again, but I was really a rom-com writer as far as screenplays. So I made, as I was writing it, strayed this line between women's fiction and also being romance. And I that's what I want to read, actually. I just really highbrow, really meaty romance is what I love and what I've always loved.
I love that. Yes. Okay, so within this book, I kind of got a sense of like a second chance romance, marriage pact trope. What would you say your favorite trope is in general?
I think enemies to lovers is like the most fun.
Definitely.
That's one of my favorite. It's like, that's my favorite, I think. I don't know what that says about me. In books, I think that's my favorite in novels for sure. It's delicious. I love when there's this like very fine line between love and hate. and exposes a lot of the character flaws, and they can learn from each other as they're falling for each other against their will. It's fun.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Kind of the era of Twilight and like those types of books really, I think, pushed us towards like the enemies to lovers, forbidden love, kind of that like genre and tropes. What tropes are you wanting to write into like your next books?
I think the next one, which is, I'm so early on, so I don't want to commit to saying this out loud because it could change, but I think forced proximity is one I haven't really played with too much. And I think I'm going to do that in the next one, because it's always really fun when you force two people to be in the same house or the same room or the same bed. So
you're just kind of like, oh, they have no choice. Like they have to. Like,
the room with the double beds is taken.
Oh no. Yeah. So while you are writing your books and everything and kind of in that process, do you read other books, or do you kind of just want to stay in like the zone of writing?
If I'm like knee deep in the zone, usually my free time is writing rather than reading, which isn't always the best thing. When I come out and I'm in the editing phase, I'm back into reading, or when I take a little pause, I'm back into reading. I think it's helpful sometimes, but there is an imprint version of it where if you're reading the exact same genre you're writing, you want to make sure that someone else's voice isn't coloring yours. And usually that's really easy to wipe away the second you're back into your work. But I don't know about you, but when I finish a book, I'm like in that character's head, feeling like that character. And sometimes that's hard when I'm in the nitty gritty part of writing. When I'm in revisions, it's a little bit easier.
Completely understandable, especially when it comes to like fantasy books and they have like whole different worlds within them, and you kind of go back and forth and you're like, wait, what character was in what world? Is this an aspect of this? So while you are writing or while you have time to read, what other books do you reach for? Like, tell me about the tropes that you reach for. I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about enemies to lovers, but are there others?
Women's fiction is usually, and romance are the spaces I usually play in. And I just like memoirs. I just read the Brittany memoir because I had to.
Oh, yes.
And also it was really kind of that I was able to read while writing my own stuff because it was just such a different book. I love Emily Henry. I really love women's fiction. So no offense to men.
Completely understandable. Yes, absolutely. I'm on that 100%. Do you have like a favorite author, or do you kind of just like stay in the realm of like women's fiction and you're open to anyone really?
I'm really open. Like I grew up, Judy Blume was my favorite. I still love her. And that's as far as like old school. But anyone now, if something gets a review that seems like, oh, that hits all these points for me, then I'll grab it. Or if a friend recommends it who I trust, then I'll dive in no matter who it is. I think giving new authors a chance is something I want someone to do for me, something I want to do for other people. So, but usually it's in that space, that same female space. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned like word of mouth, because I feel like that is kind of the biggest kind of resource, I guess, today is word of mouth. I feel like romance books aren't as taboo to talk about. And so there are more book clubs. There are more like little girl groups. There are more like things on social media that really are bringing people together. And so like word of mouth is, I feel like, so important for authors to get their books out and for like new reviews and everything like that. Okay, so I want to dig a little bit more into Maybe Once, Maybe Twice now. And I absolutely love the characters. I love Maggie so much. I want to know in general kind of what your inspiration was behind Maybe Once, Maybe Twice.
I was really searching for book number 2. I had a 2-book deal and I was, staring down a contract going, what am I going to do? And I knew I wanted it to be within a woman's decision years, like her mid-30s, sort of when you're staring down your future and you don't have children yet, and society is telling you need to be doing this one thing and your career isn't the way you want it to be. And not all women feel this way, but some do. And I wanted to give voice to that pressure. And I was in a meeting and I started writing something, and I was in just a general meeting with a man who said, I think you can, crack this. But I had this idea of like this dude, he tells two women to marry them and they both show up. And I was like, and he's like 29. And I was like, this is the worst story ever. I don't care. I was like, I don't care about this man. Men get all the decisions. Like, why is that interesting to me? And it made me so mad. And when I ended that meeting, I realized I was mad because it's a great kind of plot twist, but it shouldn't be a man. It should be a woman. It should be a woman in her mid-30s. And I started to sort of pull all these pieces together that would become maybe once, maybe twice. So it was like an aha moment. And then I threw away 40 pages of the book I was working on.
Oh my gosh. That little twist at the end there.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. That is so interesting that you pulled from kind of that story with him and you're like, no, like I'm going to change this. Love that. And then that kind of brought about Maggie. And I'm guessing anyways, kind of she just came into the story. And one thing that I mean, there were so many things that I loved about Maggie, but one thing that really stood out was the synesthesia. Is that how you say it?
Like synesthesia?
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting. And being able to, is she able to like taste colors or like see sound? Is that what it is?
Yeah, you can like taste words, and words carry with them colors, and it's just like a very visual, and it warps your senses. And I read an article about Lorde, musician Lorde, singer, and she had synesthesia, and I found that so interesting, and it sort of stuck with me. So when I was writing Maggie, I wanted to make sure music was in her DNA, that like it was such a part of her that she felt it and tasted it different than anyone else. So it was almost inescapable, this career she chose. And I liked that this set her apart, and made her a little bit different.
That's incredible. I love that. Yeah, I had never heard of it before. And I mean, that makes sense why Lorde's music is so incredible. And I want her to come out with more. But yeah, I had no idea. That is so, so interesting. I'm glad that you added it into that, or into the book, because I think that it's something that more people should know about. Another thing that I loved about Maggie is that, and you see it throughout the book and the different themes, is that she just knows what she wants and she goes for it without hesitation. And I think that's so admirable, because like this book, I related to it a lot. Like I'm in my early 30s. I don't have kids, like trying to figure out what I really want to do. And to read a book like this where she knows what she wants, she does whatever she can to get it, and we see her struggles and we see what she goes through, but she knows what she wants, and that is just like so inspiring. And I absolutely enjoyed Maggie, and I enjoyed this book so much.
Thank you.
If we start from the very beginning, I know I've seen a little bit of like interviews and your social media and everything like that, and I do want to bring it up again, but I loved in your dedication to your parents at the very beginning, that you said like, please mom, or like, please parents, like don't read the sex scenes. And I love that, because I recommend like romance books to my mom. And a lot of times I'm like, oh my gosh, mom, like, please don't read these sex scenes. Like, I'm so sorry.
Yes. Like, and if you do, never tell me.
And even, I mean, I'm at the very beginning of the book still, and already, so the dedication, really, I love that. And also your Stevie Nicks quote, I knew immediately that I would love this book because of that. And I'm guessing that this quote kind of helped you come up with the title.
Yeah, the song, it's like her line from the song Gypsy. And it, to me, when I was trying to think of titles, I was like, all right, maybe once, maybe twice when it comes to a great love. It's like it had second chance romance almost built into it. Maybe once, maybe twice when it comes to your career. There's a start and stop to Maggie's career, and then a restart. So and then, falling in love twice with two different men, maybe once, maybe twice. So it just felt like it
just fit.
A perfect fit. Yes. And Stevie Nicks is amazing. So
absolutely. 100%. So yeah, all together, it just was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And yeah, I knew immediately that I would love it because of that. So speaking of like Stevie Nicks and everything, so the music and songs, like they're spread throughout the book, and I love that. I didn't know that you actually have a Spotify playlist for it. So while I was like reading throughout the book and you would mention, or like Maggie would mention different songs, I would listen to it on Spotify while I read it. And it just like added such like emotion and just kind of put me next to them, which I loved that this book is very centered on music and songs. And so I want to know, like, did you pick these songs ahead of time, or were you like writing the book and then chose which songs fit?
As I was writing, there was, well,
Mm-hmm.
twofold. One, I made a playlist while I was starting the book just to write I usually write to music. I mean, a lot of it is Taylor Swift for me because it's like writing to white noise because I know her so well. But then I would
Right.
start adding these songs, and then as I was writing, there would just be a natural place to put a song, and I knew exactly what I wanted because I knew that Garrett was more of like a pop punk.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to sort of see, I knew that Maggie and Asher's would be very nostalgic and 90s, early 2000s. Like I was able to
Mm-hmm.
really place these songs in where I wanted them.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of both. Like I tucked some away knowing I wanted to use them later and I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
exactly where, or I would find a moment and pull in a song that seemed perfect.
I love it, love it, love it, love it. There were also just so many, like, I call them thought nuggets because it just kind of like made me stop and think for a minute. And there were also a couple like quotes that I like had to stop. And to my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, let me read this to you. Like, because it was just so like, it had my mind going. And one of them was, the women don't have midlife crisis because we've spent our lives constantly in crisis. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what? Like that just blew my mind. And so I wanted to ask like what sparked this like powerful like sentence. Like it was so incredible.
I remember my dad, we were not to like out my dad about his midlife crisis, but it was much we were younger. He was like in between things and he up and moved us from Atlanta to San Diego for like 2.5 months in the middle of my sixth
Wow.
grade. And that was his midlife crisis. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking, okay, is my mom's midlife crisis going to come? And no, because she was just always thinking about the next step and her kids and him and like, and she was just too much, not in crisis, but there was too much
Mhm.
going on to have a midlife crisis. And women are just, we always overthink in ways men don't. And so when they have to start, when they like reach a certain age where they start thinking about their future, they have a crisis. Women are, we have to think about our future when we're 30. We've, because our biological
Mhm.
future, our children, it's just different for men. Like they just, things just fall into their laps in a way,
Mhm.
usually that they don't for women. So, yeah, so we're just constantly in crisis.
Absolutely. Like I really am going to like tell that quote to like everyone because it's just mind blowing, and I love that. And thank you for sharing that. And another one that I wanted to talk about is if people want to reference, it's page 118, and this was the paragraph that I like stopped and I was like, husband or Jr. Like I have to read this to you. But it's where you said if you are vulnerable enough to put your heart on the line for an audience, nothing screams louder than the silence that follows the moment before you get a yes or no. Like mind blown once again. I'm guessing like do you remember what you were kind of thinking as you were like writing this, or what you were kind of referring to, or like inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, my career, not just as an author, but as a screenwriter, it is very much pitch, and
Mhm.
99 people will say no. 99 times it'll be a no, and you just need the one to have a career.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of no's until there's a yes, and there's that like that in between where you're like, oh, do they love this thing that I almost killed myself for? And you feel like they're saying no to you, even though they're not. So you try not to take it personally, but that is what being an artist is. It's like you dust yourself off after
Mhm.
killing yourself for a project and someone not liking it, and then at some point someone's going to say yes and raise their hand, whether it's that project or something different. But that's this just vulnerability of being an artist that is
Mhm.
really hard, and you get used to it. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, and also like to go along with that, just having the courage to keep getting back out there, especially if there are like the 99 people saying no, and just, yeah, having that to be like, no, I can keep going out there. This is what I love to do. Like, keep putting it out there, even though they might say no, and having that to just keep going. Because I'm sure a lot of people, they keep getting the no's and then they just kind of like stop. And so it's incredible that you put that in here, that it's like the moment before you get that yes or no, that you're just questioning everything. Like, did I do this right? Did I need to do this different? And having that, it just opens your eyes. Like, no, like Maggie kept going. We need to keep going. Like our dreams are there. Like, we just have to keep going. I thought that was incredible. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about like the characters now, kind of like deeper. So we're given Garrett at the beginning of the book, and we kind of follow that friendship and throughout their 20s and through the age of 35. And was that kind of like your intention, to do their relationship to make it feel like a right person, wrong time?
Yes. Yes. He was like, and originally when I just thought about this, I'm like, all right, we're going to have the very perfect relationship, but it was too soon. And then we're going to have the guy you pine for because the timing is never right. And those are, that's Asher, that's Garrett. So yeah, he's right guy, wrong time, throughout a lot of this book. And some are circumstances that are under like neither of their control that keeps them apart too. So yeah, I wanted him to definitely be that guy where you don't hate him, but it's just circumstantial that they're not together, or you wish he would step up the plate a little more.
Those are definitely the feelings that I felt. So you hit it right on the head. Okay, spoilers ahead.
I would say, like, do not keep listening if you have not finished maybe once, maybe twice, because that would be that. You don't want to know the end.
I do want to know, does he get like a happily ever after? Like, does he stay with like the girl that he was engaged to? I think it said like he broke it off. I can't remember. But yeah, in your head, like, does he get like a happily ever after?
Sure. Yeah, I have in there that he does not get married. So that's in the book. A couple people have been like, are we getting a Garrett book? I need to know if he's okay. Yes. So maybe I'll put like a Garrett, like a, I don't know, put him in one of my next books, and like he's a rancher or something where he's okay. He's got like towhead kids running around. He found the love of his life.
Yes, please.
Maybe I'll do that. It's possible. I've been thinking about it.
I love it. Yes, because that is one question that I had.
A little buried, but yes, she finds out that he does not get married, and Good. And that's in the book. Yes.
Good. I'm glad that he doesn't get married, because you could really tell that he wasn't happy. And so that makes me happy that he'll get a happily ever after, which is good. Okay. So when we talk about Asher, I loved him from the very beginning, loved him till the very end, like just the whole time. Like, he is just such a sweet, genuine soul, and you can immediately tell that about him. And they're just so sweet to each other. When they reconnect, he is like this big celebrity. Were you thinking of like a different profession, like kind of toying around with different professions for him? Or did you kind of already like know that he was going to be like this award-winning actor?
I wanted him to be a creative like her. I wanted them to bond over that, especially because Garrett sort of goes into a different direction. So I didn't want him to be a business guy. I wanted to give that to Garrett. I think it's really nice that they could bond over being artists and creatives and, putting everything on the line to do what they love.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of having him in that creative, especially when they go to like the camp, and having something that's kind of related so that they can bond over there, which makes sense. Is there, when you were kind of creating like the storyline and the plot and everything like that, was there an alternate ending in your head that you had where she did end up with Garrett?
Yeah. The first draft, she ends up with Garrett, but the first draft also doesn't have the multiple timelines. So it's more like little vignettes in the chapters where we kind of learn about how she met these guys, but it wasn't threaded the way it is. And once I started writing more of Asher and Maggie's backstory, and once I started really digging into Garrett, I just
Mhm.
didn't want him to end up with her. I didn't want her to end up with him, honestly. For him, that'd be great. But for her,
Right.
I was like, Asher's just too healthy. Like, this is such a healthy choice, but also it has the fireworks, it has the stability. There was no
Mhm.
reason in my mind not to have her end up with him. And for Garrett, I could think of a couple reasons. Biggest one being Asher, really.
Right. Right. And you definitely kept us on our toes. Like I honestly didn't know who she would end up with at the end. Well, it was like more towards the end that I was like, I still don't know who she's going to choose. Like I don't know. And so I loved that you kind of kept it like it could be either one still. And then even at the very end where Asher like walks away too, I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to be happening? And then when he comes back into their life, I was like, okay, good. Whew, like just wipe my brow. Like, because yeah, it really was so intense. And I'm like, I have no idea who she's going to choose.
Yeah, I didn't
Did
either. I mean, halfway through
Yeah,
the revisions, I knew. But for the,
but
just know that writing it was a difficult decision. So I'm glad it
yeah.
was difficult for other people too.
I want to know throughout this whole book, there is definitely like that theme of music, theme of lyrics, creativity throughout the whole thing. I thought it was honestly like mind blowing that you have these songs in there that you created. Like you have 6 full songs at the very end of the book. And I like read the lyrics and I was in awe. Like that is so incredible. Like, did you write these songs like just for the book, or did you kind of already like have them in mind? Like, where did they come from?
No, I wrote them just for the book. And while I was writing the book, I was reading a lot about the music business, but also the creative side. And then also I had a bunch of books on writing music and lyrics, and
Hmm.
that was helpful. And I would get to that place in the book and sit down or you'll notice there's some little bits of those lyrics peppered in the book itself. So
Hmm.
either I would write the whole song and then that was easy to put in the back, or I had already had a verse and I needed to expand it into a full song for the songbook in the back. So,
Hmm.
but it was so much, that was so fun. It was time consuming, but so fun. And I felt like
I love it.
because we really kind of understand who Maggie is when we read those full songs, I think, rather than just
Hmm.
seeing the little verse here or there. I think it was kind of a nice surprise. The book didn't need it, but I think it's better for it.
Absolutely. It's such a great addition to it, and also yeah, like a great surprise at the end. Like, oh my gosh, here's the full song that Maggie was talking about, or that she was like referencing, or about like Garrett, or about like yeah, it just was the perfect addition that just made it all kind of circle back around to each other and just mesh all together, and it was absolutely perfect. Okay, so those are all the questions that I have. This book, once again, was absolutely incredible. Just everything about it, the vibe that I felt throughout it, the music that you brought into it. Also, for the listeners, go to Alison's Spotify and listen to the music if you can while you read this book. It just adds so much more to it, and it just gets you in the perfect mind space for this novel. It was absolutely perfect. I loved like the true love and the second chance, and the kind of circling back around to the two loves with the marriage pact, and it just overall loved it. So I'm so glad that you could be on this podcast. I'm so glad that we could talk about all of this. Is there anything that you are wanting to tell the listeners, or to someone that will be picking up this book?
Um, no, I guess you're in for a wild ride with this book. And I think it's, I see a lot of this, but it's sort of, and I love the cover, but it's a cartoon cover, but it really, there are deeper themes here,
Hmm.
and some darker moments too. So, buckle up, but it's very emotional, and I hope it touches you. And that's what I'd want to tell people.
I love it. I love it. Well, you did an incredible job, and I hope that it keeps continuing to like gain traction and get out there even more. And I hope that people put this on their bookshelf and have it on their TBR. And I hope the most success for it and for you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Seriously, thank you for
Yes.
having me and for all the words that you said about my book. It means so much.
No, I love it. No, thank you again. And as for your social media, I have your website, which is AlisonRoseGreenberg.com. And then for Twitter or X is at Alison Greenberg. And then for Instagram as well, Alison.Greenberg. And then your Spotify playlist is called Maybe Once, Maybe Twice. Are there any other social media that you are wanting to plug?
No, those are the good ones.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I loved this so much. I love being able to get into this space and interview people. I'm still pretty new to it, but I'm so glad that you took a chance and took the time to be on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.